Welcome to the Legal Interview Project. The Legal Interview Project is a collection of teens who are dedicated towards making legal resources for the high school, junior to college, sophomore range, talking about how to get into law. Today I'm joined by Abbi Sullivan, a rising 2L at the University of St. Thomas School of Law. It's great to have you.
Nice to be here. Thank you so much for doing this. This is an incredible project.
Of course. So tell me, what does what is law school like? There's a lot of hype around law school. You get to law school. What's the day to day like? You get there.
Yeah.
What is there?
I mean, it's different for everyone. Your 1L year, so your first year of law school, here is your schedule. There's no deviation from the schedule. Everyone is in the same boat as you. So looking back to last year, that was you have 2 to 3 classes every single day, Monday through Friday. And you're just focused on classes. Now, some people did have outside jobs or, their parents, so they have outside responsibilities. But the main idea is that you are only a student. You're not focusing on anything else because you need to get everything, figured out. And it's a trial and error to figure out what works for you. And then you get into your 2L year. And that's when you start having more flexibility. So I will be in classes Monday through Thursday. I'll have Friday free. I will be at an externship then, so it's not free, but it's really just kind of build your own schedule. You'll be taking some night classes, morning classes, afternoon classes, mix. And then you can start saying, this is the classes I want to focus on taking, as well as there are some more required courses. And then 3L year. You can take as little classes as possible to still maintain the full-time student status. And then a lot of 3L students are almost working full-time at that point too. But again, it really depends on the individual and depends on the experience they want. I know some of my friends are very academic focused. They want to experience everything they possibly can in the classroom. And some of my friends are more of, let me get out there, hands-on approach, and practice real time and learn as I go. So it depends on the person.
Yeah. What's been your favorite class so far?
So far, I would have to say contracts, my fall semester. The main reason why I love that class so much is because my professor, Professor Granardo, he is a really great professor who was able to see us all as individuals. There was 86 people in the class, and he was able to recognize everyone's strength and weakness and teach us in a way that met us where we were at. He broke down what law school is. It's basically a point grabbing exercise for every law school class and every law school exam. So he taught us the foundation of that. And he also helped us to realize that yes, law school is difficult. Yes, the upcoming final exam is super stressful. You can't think of anything else, hard to eat, sleep, all of that. But he was able to show us, why we're there by telling us stories of his pro bono work. And he wasn't afraid to be emotional about the work he's done to kind of showcase what we're going to be able to do in the future. So I love that class, not for necessarily the contract material, but because of the life lessons I learned in that.
Yeah. Do you see yourself going into like pro bono, going into that focus?
So I actually am interested heavily in pro bono work and volunteer work. I am currently serving as the chair of the Public Service Board at St. Thomas. So St. Thomas is very much a mission-oriented school, and that means that we focus on giving back to the St. Thomas community and the greater community. And one way we can do that is through volunteering. We are a Catholic university. We are going to have that Catholic value of help your neighbor. Um, and so what the Public Service Board does is we have a 50-hour of volunteering requirement before we can graduate. That's over 3 years. And so Public Service Board kind of governs that. They've come up with opportunities for students to participate in for volunteering. They encourage volunteering, and then they approve or deny different volunteer efforts, to make sure that it is fitting in with the mission and it's not going outside the scope of what you might be able to call volunteering.
Do you think that like how has your volunteering evolved until law school? Like throughout high school, throughout your undergraduate studies, how have you sort of gotten to this position as the head of a volunteering like department at the law school?
Yeah, so I was in Girl Scouts actually for 12 years. And so that kind of gave me a foundation of see a difference in your community and try to make a sustainable change. And so that's kind of always been my mindset going into different scenarios. So in all the way through my, early education to high school, I was always involved in volunteering efforts, always a part of like Key Club or the Kiwanis International Organization. So involved in those situations where volunteering was at the forefront of what you were doing. And then I went to Assumption University undergraduate. It's in Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm from Minnesota, but I decided to go to Massachusetts for undergrad. And when I went there, I actually had the Light the Way scholarship. So only 25 individuals who go into, like every single year get that scholarship. And part of the requirement is that we are volunteering a certain amount of time each year. And we're taking classes that are going to help us with making a change in our community. So for example, when I was an undergrad, I took a class where we were focused on the effects of climate change. It was a one credit course, but what we had to do was a project that was going to kind of spread the word of something people could do to make a sustainable difference. And one of the things that I did was create a website, and I wrote to a whole bunch of different newspaper like editors and put like just a lot of articles out there about the website and created that education. So I've always kind of had this sense of volunteering is so important. And so when I was choosing the law school I wanted to go to, and I knew St. Thomas was very mission oriented, I was like, that's it. That's where I want to go. And I didn't even know about public service board at that point, but I was a 1L a representative last year. And then I applied to be secretary actually for this year. And they said, how about you be president? So I'm like, okay, twist my arm.
What about like getting to the public defense forum? Like how do you d different things like that? Do you find that there's like an internal competition within the law school to like be the biggest volunteer or like something like that?
Yeah, so one of the other reasons why I really love St. Thomas, and I'm not trying to be like everyone should come here, obviously find the place that fits you. But St. Thomas does a really good job of telling us from the very first moment we step on campus for orientation that we are surrounded by people that we will either work with, either they'll be in the same firm as us, on the same side, or they'll be opposing counsel, or they'll be on the bench. So whether that's litigation where you are actually arguing in court, or it could be even transactional where you are on opposing sides writing a contract, um, we are always kind of taught, and it's been reiterated many, many times that the people we are going to school with, we need to build those connections and
Mhm.
not ostracize or be overly competitive with each other because we don't want to tear down relationships before they start. And that's what I really like to hear here. It's not so much of you need to get ahead, you need to do the best, you need to be the best. It's how can you help yourself and help others, and not so much of how many people can you step on to get to the top.
Yeah. How do you find that legal advocacy helps, especially in pro bono cases? How do you find that it helps different communities that without pro bono work might not have access to legal support?
I mean, so okay, so this past summer I've been working at it's a small litigation firm called Labor Giuliani and Shackelford. It's in Minnetonka, and they do personal injury defense, and they represent State Farm. So we have a lot of clients that'll come in, and they'll get into car accidents, obviously, um, and we'll look at different things, different documents or different policies. And one thing I've really realized this year is that the language that you see in your day-to-day life, such as insurance policy, which is what pretty much everyone will have, can be so convoluted and hard to understand. And so if you take that kind of mindset of there's a document that should be digestible, approachable to everyone, and lawyers can't even understand fully what it's saying, um, you can kind of take that mindset into really any practice day to day. So when people are faced with something they're not aware of, unsure of, they've never had to deal with before, they're going to be so lost, confused, scared, all of the emotions. And so by being able to provide a pro bono service to someone who is not available or not able to get legal representation or counsel takes a huge weight off their shoulders. And it might not fix all the problems, right? But it's going to help them um, even get a step further in their goal and what they're trying to achieve. And so that's, I think, what a really important thing about pro bono is because everyone has felt lost, afraid, unsure when they're approached or like they're presented with something that they have no clue how to digest it. And so that's what the pro bono service will help do for not just people who can afford legal representation, but people who don't have the time or don't have the money or don't have the resources.
On the flip side, how do you maximize the good? Let's say you're running a pro bono firm. How would you maximize the amount of good that you're able to do, like reaching the most people with being like as low cost as possible? So like, how do you make enough money to help the people that really need it while also not being money oriented? So um, like, what would your, if you were put in that situation, what would your thinking advise you to do?
Yeah, so I mean, there are organizations like that. Not every firm obviously is a pro bono firm. A lot of firms will be, they have their rainmakers, they're making money, they're having those big contracts, so they're bringing clients in. And then they encourage their attorneys to do X amount of hours a year pro bono. And they'll be not compensated fully, but they'll be excused as those hours. So when they have to reach the billable 1,800 hours, so many of those hours might be pro bono. So that's one way that a firm might handle it, where they're able to make money, able to be profitable, able to bring in business, but also be able to give back and represent individuals who can't afford their services. There's places like Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid. Um, they're going to be offering services pretty much free of charge, if not free of charge. Um, Obviously, there's different circumstances with each sector. And a lot of those types of organizations, such as Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid, they rely on government regulations and government stipends, but they also rely on students. So a lot of times we're asked as law students to help fill in the gaps where attorneys or organizations can't fill because they do not have the amount of people that they need to do that. And we can't practice law by ourselves. Obviously, we are still students. We have not passed the bar. We can't go out and give free legal advice. But
Yeah.
what we can do is be guided and guide others that way. So that's kind of how I've seen it play out with there's different approaches, different services, different organizations, but it really does take a village to be able to give pro bono and be able to provide legal services to underrepresented or underprivileged individuals.
Do you think that more people need to, more aspiring attorneys need to choose this sort of virtue-oriented legal work, versus do some high-level litigation working for like a big bank or some other company?
I think there's a good avenue to do both. Obviously, everyone has a different calling. I know myself, I am not the type of person that's going to go do big litigation work. Um, And some people, they're like, oh yeah, that sounds no big deal at all. I can do that. Um, so it's finding the balance of what you can do and what your skills are. Um, because if everyone did the same thing in law, it would not work. Even if they were all in different, different practices, if they were all practicing the same way, it would not work. Um, so it's finding what works the best for you and how to give back. Obviously, there's, I think, more of a focus, especially with St. Thomas. St. Thomas was founded in 2001, so it is a newer law school compared to like U of M or William Mitchell.
Mhm.
Um, so it is more of like a, hey, we're meant to be a mission-oriented school. And so I think a lot of the St. Thomas grads are focused on that as they go into their day-to-day practice. Um, and I do think, we have had some influence over U of M and Mitchell Hamlin and as well as some other schools. I know that the ABA has started to adopt some of our practices, which is pretty fun to hear about. Um, so long story short, it is a balance. I think you can be that top dog arguing like big litigation for whatever firm, and then you can also give back in the ways that you can.
Yeah. So you can sort of like you can do both. You don't have to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you find that St. Thomas, like how do you find the religious values to play into the mission of the school?
So again, it's more a mission of help thy neighbor.
Mhm.
So really focusing on how can you give back to your community? How can you make sacrifices maybe for your community? And that's something that they are really now, not that they were straying from that, but they're refocusing back on that aspect. We just got a new dean this past year, so he was new as of last year. Um, and he is very focused on bringing us back to our roots, which is focusing on the mission of being a service-oriented school.
Sort of focusing on your individual journey. I know we talked a lot about your school, but really focusing on you. Like as a kid, did you want to be a lawyer? Did you want
I
to,
did actually.
yeah?
Yep. So I was 12 years old and I was like, I'm going to law school. That is going to be what I want to do. I did start with wanting to be a veterinarian, and then I realized I could not do that because I am allergic to some animals. That might not have been the best route. And I'm like, okay, I'll be a nurse. And then my dad kindly pointed out that that involves blood, and I don't like blood. So then I was like, I'll be a doctor. And he's like, same thing, different profession. And so I'm like, okay, well, if I can't be a veterinarian, can't be a nurse, can't be a doctor, obviously the next option is lawyer. And so that was what I've been saying since I was 12 years old. And when I got to junior year of college, I went through oh crap, do I want to be a lawyer because I want to do that? Or is it because I've been saying it for so long that now I feel like I have to do it? So I went through that. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know if this is the right path for me. This is what I've been preparing for, my entire education, but now I don't know. And so I did take a gap year. I decided not to take the LSAT that summer in between junior and senior year.
Mhm.
And instead, I focused on taking a gap year and then studying after my senior year and taking the LSAT then. And I am really grateful that I took a gap year. I worked with the Anoka County Courthouse and court as a criminal intake for court operations. And so I learned so much. I was applying for schools at the same time I was working there. So even though I wasn't 100% sure I was still interested in law school at that point, I knew that if I didn't apply, I would never apply. So I was like, okay, I'll apply, I'll get accepted places, and then I can still make a decision whether or not to go.
What was
But
your
as
thinking behind taking a gap year? Like why take a gap year? Why did you decide to sort of move the LSAT?
Yeah, so I thankfully am able to talk to my parents much like about this and be open and honest with them. And it was actually the last day to register for the LSAT I would need to take before my junior year. And if I was going to apply, for or like in between junior and senior year. So if I was going to apply in time my senior year, it was like the last possible LSAT date I could have taken.
Mhm.
And it was the night before that registration was closing. And I called my mom and I'm like, okay, I'm registering for the LSAT. She's like, you haven't even studied yet. What are you doing? And so she's like, just take a gap year. Like, you don't know. Don't force yourself to know right now. And I, of course, was like, I can't take a gap year. No one takes a gap year. Come to find out, everyone takes a gap year. It's very rare to have someone go straight through. And if you do, that's totally fine. But if you take a gap year or 5, 6, 7, 8 gap years, also totally fine. Um, so that's kind of why I was like, okay, fine, I'll take a gap year because I am so not prepared to start applying to law school. And when I was at the courthouse, I worked with judges, law clerks, prosecuting attorneys, public defenders, private defense, and I realized that there are so many different types of lawyers, not just different professions or different fields that you can go in and practice law, but just so many different personalities of lawyers that I was like, I can see myself helping others by going to law school and getting into the profession of law than if I just stay where I am. So
How do
that
you
was kind
find
of
different passions? Like, do you find that initially you're interested in being a vet? Are you still interested in helping maybe through law, like with animal issues? Do you find those things to sort of connect?
yes, so actually I am secretary for the Animal Legal Defense Fund. And this is a national organization, but we have a chapter here at St. Thomas. And so what our organization here, I mean, it's a lot of how can you help and how can you help influence like the government to create regulations that are going to be better for animals and animal owners and all of that. But what we do specifically for the St. Thomas chapter is we are volunteering and we are going to animal shelters and we are taking dogs on walks and we are hopefully going to be hosting an animal like adoptions um, day here. So that's the hope. We'll have to get that approved, but that's what our focus is, and kind of showcasing what you can do if you wanted to get into this profession. It's a very small, small niche of a law profession to work with the Animal Legal Defense Fund or do something along those lines. So it's fun
So
to
kind of
learn
like
from it for
full
sure.
circle from 12-year-old you to law school you, still working on the same issue.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
do you take this gap year, you get a job working for a local court. When was the moment that you were like, law school, I'm not sure about this. I don't know if this is what I want to do in 40 years, but I know that this is how I can help people right now. What was that moment for you?
You mean why I chose to work at the courthouse or just when I was applying to law schools in general?
When you were applying to law school, like what made you decide to hit apply?
Yeah, so I decided to hit apply before I even realized that I did actually want to go to law school. I mean, when I stepped foot on campus last year to do orientation, I was like, what am I doing here? I'm an imposter. No one else is thinking that they shouldn't be here. Yes, everyone is thinking they shouldn't be there. So that was fun. But I had this instance where I was helping an individual. He called because he was at the Hennepin County Workhouse and in Minnesota, we have something called a sign and release warrant. And a sign and release warrant is issued if you miss your misdemeanor court date.
Mhm.
And it shows in your case file that you had returned mail. So your address was not correct in our system, meaning you never got notice about your court hearing. So instead of issuing a warrant where you could be arrested and taken to jail for not having your correct address, they started a sign and release warrant, and it was implemented January 2024. So very new. It was when I was working at the courthouse, very new, a lot of issues with it. And this one gentleman at the Hennepin County Workhouse was supposed to be released. Um, but they were saying, oh, you have a warrant out of Anoka County. We can't release you unless Anoka County comes to pick you up to take you to court there. Well, when you have a sign and release warrant, all you have to do is sign a form saying, here's my new address. I understand. Here's my new court date. I will be there. I'm going to sign my name. You don't have to be picked up anywhere. You can do that on the side of the road with the officer, or you can do it in the courthouse. You don't have to be arrested, transported to jail. So that means that Anoka County was not going to send over a sheriff deputy to go pick up this gentleman to take him to Anoka County Jail.
Mhm.
But the Hennepin County Workhouse was not releasing him. So he had 15 minutes of, of a day to use the phone. And he got in contact with me because I was answering the phones. It just happened to end up being me. And I didn't understand what he was saying at first. I'm like, well, if you have a warrant, like they'll come get you. That's how it works. And I realized, no, they should not go get him. He should be able to sign a paperwork and be a-okay. He was on the verge of losing his housing. He was on the verge of losing his job. He was just like all these bad things. And yes, he had committed a crime previously, which is why he was in the workhouse. But that doesn't mean that he needs to lose his entire life because
Yeah.
of a mistake that someone else is making.
What were the legal issues present there, just for people who might not be super familiar? What, like, the courthouse is making a mistake. What sort
The
of,
workhouse was.
yeah, so the workhouse is making a mistake. What are the legal issues behind there? And like what basis does he have to say that they're making a mistake?
Well, I mean, there's not going to be many legal implications. No one's going to be sued for detaining him. He, if he tried to bring a suit against someone for detaining him, it wouldn't have gone through. But basically, he's being detained longer than he needs to. Um, he is not being released when he should have been. And someone at the workhouse either misunderstood what the new legislation was or didn't want to understand. I choose to think it was the former. It could have been the latter. I hope it wasn't the latter. But I contacted our Anoka County jail. She was kind of our liaison between the courthouse and jail. And she's like 5 foot something, tiny woman. And she was like, I'll go full bulldog on them. Let me at him, to just help him out. And so that was kind of my moment of realizing, okay, this poor man did not deserve this. He did not deserve the treatment that he was experiencing because of, you know, his inability to have correct representation or his inability to have someone speaking up for him. And, I could have easily just said, well, that's your problem to figure out. But no, that's not fair to him, especially when I can see what the problem was. And so that was kind of a moment for me that I was like, yes, this is why I want to go to law school. This is what I can help people with. Having these moments where they don't know how to do something, they don't know who to turn to, they don't know what they need to do to get out of whatever situation they're in. And that's why it's so important to, if you're able to give your voice and lend your voice to others, you should do it.
Kind of as a closing note, what would you say to people of any age who aren't sure of law school? Maybe they're interested, maybe they're not. They feel that they might be imposters if they get to law school campus. Like, what would you say to those type of people who know that they have the skills, but maybe law is not for them or they're not for law?
Well, I would have to say, everyone is in the same boat. Even if they are adamant that they are, yes, meant for law school, this is what they want to do, they've worked in a firm for many, many years, and now this is the next step, they're still going to feel like an imposter. That is just something that everyone feels like. Um, and it's such a weird situation to be in because no one talks about it. Everyone's thinking, I don't belong here, but no one talks about it. And so it's okay to feel that way. It definitely is. Let that fuel you to kind of prove the haters wrong, so to say. Even if you are your only hater, prove yourself wrong. Um, it's so important to just follow what you think is right. And even if you get on the other side of your 3L year, walk across the graduation stage, you have your JD in hand, you don't have to take the bar. You can take your JD and you can do anything with it. So that's another thing. If you're like, okay, I am into my 2L year, I don't want to work in a law firm, I don't want to be in a house counsel, I don't want to work for a government organization, you can do anything you want with that JD. You've put in the time, you put in the effort, you put in the work, and it shows and it will show. So you don't have to feel like you're forcing yourself into a profession that actually doesn't work with what you want to do. You'll find something that will be perfect, regardless if it's a bar job or not.
Okay, thank you so much.